welcome to the Blue Collar Pastor. I am Pastor Nick from Ecclesia, and I'm joined today again with Pastor Nathan from Ecclesia, and we're joined with, we got a light instead. We've got this oil lamp instead of Justin.
Represent Justin.
Yes, it represents
we needed
Justin.
something to fill this place.
So if he gets angry, when he would normally get angry,
that warm glow we usually get.
The warm glow that he brings to the discussion. So we've kind of been talking about how we're going to do these podcasts and discussions and whatnot, and we think we've come along. Obviously we've only done a few of these, but we've come to a new conclusion: is from now on, if what we're doing is truly just a discussion, what we would normally talk about hanging out in my pub, from now on, one of us picks the topic, the other two have no idea what it is. Mm-mm. And then, like you would in a conversation, you just get talking about stuff, and that's how it comes out. So again, we don't script these. There's nothing to it.
We don't get no prep.
Right. It's just, hey, one guy's going to bring a question, and then we're going to talk about it. And we're going to try to keep these down in time, too. Like last time, an hour and 15 minutes. We're going to try and shoot for the 30 to 45 minute time.
Our last one was that long?
Oh, yeah, it was really long, yeah.
Yeah, so, there's probably more on that topic, too.
Oh, there was, yeah, and it went on. But, you even had to have a potty break in between that. So
Yeah.
So that's kind of where we're at. And just so we'll share a little bit here, this what we're drinking, which I think is worth bringing this up, because I found this on it was on TikTok.
Moonshine, no,
not moonshine. It is it's really good. It took whiskey.
Yeah,
I don't like whiskey. You don't really care for whiskey. Neither of us are really big whiskey fans at all. Heck, I might drink a beer a month. I'm not a real big beer drinker. But you take whiskey, cut up a full apple, throw it in there with a cinnamon stick and honey. Leave it in the jar for, I think it was like a week, 1 to 2 weeks, in a cool, dark place. Just let it sit, and it tastes like apple pie, and it's good. Mm-hmm. I ain't gonna lie, this is good. So you can look it up sometime. Maybe I'll put the description, a link to it, because if you're not really a big whiskey drinker, this is
a good one of those other concoctions you can find.
I'm sure there are. It does have a little bit of a bite, but it's not like a real whiskey bite. So that's where it is. Anyway, so our discussion for today, which we did a little prep on this one, in the sense that we talked about it before we started.
Yeah.
I didn't want to catch Nathan off guard.
5 minutes.
Because without Justin here, it was like, well. So what we were going to discuss is actually homeschooling. Both Nathan and I homeschooled. Justin, his youngest son was homeschooled for, I think, through high school. Mm-hmm. My kids, I have, of the 6, Garrett went through public school education. Dennis did as well. But then my 4 youngest have been homeschooled for, I don't know how many years now. It's been a long time.
Well, we're going on 7 years. So we kind of met. Our kids were on the same age when we met.
So it's probably been about the same amount of time. And then I have one of my daughters, I should say, so 4. One of my daughters, last year, we transitioned her over to private Christian school. That was because she wanted to, and want to support that, and the kids want to do that. But that was her heart, was to do it because it's what she wants to do, and it's been a blessing. I mean, she's that kid who could just, I've never had to say, "Hey, are you doing your homework?" And never once.
Right.
She's uber grateful to go, so she knows got to take care of it. Her mom and dad will just pull it. So she's like that. So, but we wanted to talk about the homeschooling.
Yeah.
And really just from our perspectives and what we've seen, why we do it, advantages, disadvantages, different movements, and wherever we go with it. So that's kind of the discussion. So I guess let's just start with a simple question, and I'll throw it to you.
Uh-oh. Questions already.
Why homeschool? Just a simple play. That's a big question.
Yeah, it is. It's. I think that you're going to have a variety of answers from multiple people. I mean, everyone you ask, they have their own reasons.
What's your reason?
Let's talk about the assumptions.
Okay. Yeah.
So I think that people who are unfamiliar with homeschooling, their assumptions are people homeschool their children because they want to shelter them. Mm-hmm. Right? I think that's maybe the biggest assumption, is they don't want their kids out there in the world. And so it's a way of sheltering or protecting them. That wasn't one of our reasons. Mm-hmm. What are some other ones? What have you heard?
Well, I mean, one is that, that sheltering one is what you hear a lot. Mm-hmm. But I think some of the things you get against it are is people are doing it because they don't trust the school systems. I mean, that happens.
Yeah.
there's a plethora of reasons what people assume.
Yeah.
But the reality is, I mean, we can speak to ourselves, and
I can give you my answer too.
Yeah, we can speak to probably several people. I mean, we can represent a pretty good batch of Christianity.
So for me, for us, our family, being working from home, so we run our business from our home, and in homeschooling, it gives us just a broad range of freedom with our schedule. And that's one thing that I love. Like, we don't have to vacation when everyone else vacations, and so that's a big plus for us. So, I mean, when all the shutdowns happen, other than not getting to go out to dinner like we used to do, it didn't affect us that bad. We weren't like, the kids weren't like, oh no, what are we gonna do for school? Just went on as normal. What are we gonna do for work? Just went on as normal, right? So that was a huge blessing to us. But I would say, if I had to pick one, the primary reason is I just have for many years felt a responsibility as a parent to be the one that guides my children through something as important as education. Not that I'm like a professor, but you don't have to be to homeschool.
No,
right? There is so much curriculum out there. As long as you have the time and the patience to study and prepare and then just lead your children through it. And another thing is, we have control of our schedule in the sense of, you know what, you're struggling that topic, let's slow down. So one kid will go slower than the other ones, because the whole point is learning, not just to get through it, not just to get a grade, but actually understand what you're learning.
Yeah,
right?
Like the public school system, compare it to, I'm 45, you're 47, comparing the public school system today versus when we were kids. Now, I did go to a private school from kindergarten through 8th grade. But even the high school, it was public school. But back then, like, we were taught to learn. And I remember, I know schools have libraries today, but I always remember having library day, like in the sense that we went to the library purposefully to research, to learn.
Yeah.
The school had the library, we would go to the library, the county library, the city library. I mean, we did the library stuff because you were learning to learn.
Yeah.
And today what it seems like is the school system is designed to take a test. The kids aren't taught to learn anymore. They're taught, look, you memorize this material so you can pass this test so they can get more funding from the government. It's like kind of what it seems like. Yeah. I know it's a blanket statement, and we're not going to qualify squat of really what we're saying.
Yeah, there's a lot of small town schools that still do things at a slower pace, or the things that we're familiar with. Because I was all public school.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you want to get into the whole idea of sheltering your children, every ounce of trouble I've ever been in was because of influences at school, things I've done.
Correct.
So there's honestly, there is that measure, especially today. My brother, he's 26. So he's significantly younger than I am. And even his experience in high school is way different than mine.
Yeah.
Because I was like, wow, I can't believe this stuff going on. The type of drugs and just harm that happens to kids in there.
Yeah, I remember, there was always that argument. Well, how would your kids be socialized? I always hated that. Like,
what's your answer to that?
Well, today,
I got mine.
Today, my answer is pretty simple.
Yeah,
I don't want I'd rather my kids are socialized with my parents than a boy that thinks he's a cat and they have a litter box in the classroom. Like, what kind of socialization is my kid getting? They're getting socialization with adults.
Yeah.
And that's what I think the biggest blessing is. And one of the big blessings are, but also like the kids, at least, I'm not saying my kids are super mature. They're still children, but they are around adults a lot more than children. And typically with like kids, they'll take the lowest common denominator when it comes to how they act.
Yeah.
And so like when they're around adults strictly, they tend to mature a bit faster. Like they just think differently, can have conversations. And
I can't think of the reference, but there's a verse in Proverbs that he who walks with the wise will be wise, but the companion of fools will be foolish, or something like that. And it's like, that's what you have. Right. I mean, when your only influences are your peers, right, your maturity level is going to be the same as everyone else in the room.
Yeah.
My kids are the same way. They look at kids their age and they're like, wow, they're kind of immature. But going back to, my answer is similar. The whole socialization. I'm just like, Well, what is the reality of your life? The reality of your life is family.
Yep.
No matter who you are, where you're in the world, that's the reality of your life. The reality is not being forced to sit in a room with 30 of your own peers. Unless you work in an office building, right? Or something like that. But family and home life is reality. Mm-hmm. And so if they can get a healthy home life and know how mom treats dad treats mom, kids treat each other, I'd rather see them have a greater home life than a social life when they get older.
Yeah, when it comes to like going another step too, when it comes to like curriculum, we had a conversation today with somebody at our church.
Yeah.
Like I know a struggle we had at first was like trying to recreate the public school system. It's your brain just goes, that's how kids learn. I think there's that initial like, this is what I have to do. Like I have to make the standard of the public school or I'm failing.
Yeah.
And I know first year and a half of doing it, it was like, man, we're not doing this right. Oh, we missed this. We did, and it just felt like we were always trying to keep up with the school system. But when the mindset change for us was when, basically over, I think it was over summer, I was thinking about it. We were working through curriculum. My brain went, what did we like? Public school systems are a new invention. I think the Department of Education was created in like the 50s or 60s. Like it wasn't around forever, like in America. Department
Not
of
the way it
Education.
is today. Definitely.
Right.
No.
And so like what changed me was I was thinking back, like how did kids the last 6,000 years, let's say go back to Adam and Eve, how did they learn? And the answer was with their family. Mm-hmm. And then one of the basics of learning is that we came to was reading, writing, and arithmetic, right? Mm-hmm. Those three things that we always think back, the reading, writing, and arithmetic, which gets you to the question of why do we read? What's the purpose of reading? Well, the main purpose of reading is because God is in his word, given us his word. Like he's written a book for us. So the first reason to read is to interact with God. Yeah. And then the writing purpose is to interact with, to interact with God's word. So it's the ability to take God's word and actually work through it. You have to be all right for that. And then arithmetic, which would be your math, is how you deal with the next guy down the road. Like that's how we deal with our neighbors, because life revolves around money, weights, measures, and you got to put in his word. So it's falling back to like, those are the basics. If we get those things and the kids know how to learn, we don't have to create the school system. We can rather go, these are the things they need to know. All the other things we'll teach them to learn.
Yeah.
Teach them.
And you just kind of entered into, we carve out this section of the encouraging part of this podcast, because there's a lot of families who try to replicate the public school system, and it's frustrating. Yep. Because it's not meant to fit into a homeschool environment, right? That's why it's other. It's different than that. Another thing too is why heavily a part of our homeschooling is two things: Bible and money. Mm-hmm. The things you don't learn in public school, the things that are most important in life, is learning. Leading cause of divorce. Leading cause of issues, financial issues. Knowing how to use the money that God entrusts you is. Everybody needs to know that, right? And they don't teach it in school. Yep. Obviously, there's probably some programs in some small schools somewhere, but generally speaking, you don't see it. And then theology, learning the Bible. Yep. Those are the most important things that we have to deal with every day. Our relationship with God and being stewards of the resources he gives us. Yep. And so those are two topics I love. Right. So we'll bring in curriculum from all sorts of resources to do that stuff.
Yeah, and you don't have to, the other thing, it's so weird. We think we have to spend, like homeschooling can be expensive. It can be downright expensive. Yeah. Like there's no doubt. Some of those curriculums are ridiculous. And, I don't make $1 zillion, enough to make, you don't make enough that we both be like, hey, I can get whatever curriculum my kids want or I want to do, because money is limited, and especially today where it's even more limited. But you don't have to do that. My brain always goes, well, if there's enough homeschooling families, I always see like on Facebook Marketplace things, like groups, people selling curriculum. Ideally, that's not what happens. You don't sell it. Like to me, like when we're done with curriculum, I want to find another family in the church. It's like, hey, we're doing it. Well, here's the curriculum we use. You can have it. Yeah. Like just but then the promise is this: when you're done with it, pass it to somebody else. Yeah. Almost instead of having a library in a church, you almost should have a homeschooling library where there's all the resources you can need and you can take it as you need.
Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah.
Like a way to maybe something we need to figure out.
I wonder if they do that at co-ops and stuff. I'm not sure, but
right. That's the thing. You don't have to have all that money. Right. There are resources around. With the technology we have with the internet, there's things you can do on there and find things. Like you can print math papers. You can print this. If you have, I mean, the curriculum for the school system early Americana was the King James Bible.
Yeah.
Like that's what the main thing was. Yeah. Like if you have a Bible, you can really start there.
It's where they learn to read and everything.
Yeah, read, write, because you can have them writing on it. Because I still don't know what a pronoun is versus I don't know any of that stuff. And I went to public school, for those years. So do my kids really need to know it? I'm sure there's some teacher on there like, yes, they do. No,
I'm sure if you stopped and thought about it for a minute.
Your wife was a teacher. Yeah. So
they were in the private school.
Yeah.
For the first couple of years, like kindergarten, first grade, then we end up coming home. But something you mentioned, was I just thinking? Oh yeah, about sharing curriculum, and then there's co-ops. I mean, there's a lot of socialization that happens there.
Sunday mornings.
Yeah. Sunday mornings,
kids.
Having families over for dinner, their friends, your kids interacting. As far as the curriculum goes, like last year we just did a hodgepodge of stuff, but man, there was so much resources on YouTube.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Right, for history channels. Yeah. For learning math problems that they were struggling with. There's just so much stuff on YouTube you could use.
Yeah.
The kids, and they're so visual nowadays.
Right.
Everything's TV, video games, whatever. You throw in a video and they're like, oh, I get it.
Yeah, and you use that stuff. Like God's given us that as a blessing. Like sure, wicked man may have come up with it, but that doesn't mean God's not going to redeem it and use it for good purpose.
It's education.
Church history. What a thing! Like kids learn about church history.
Oh yeah, there's so many cool videos on the Reformation and Martin Luther.
Yeah, we've had kids read like books on John Knox. One of my kids was reading Fox's Book of the Martyrs. Yeah, like these kind of things are a blessing that we just need to use and utilize. I do think throw it out there. No, we're not qualifying anything. This is our conversation. You're entering into what's going on in our heads. I do think, personally speaking, and I won't speak for you, I'll let you say your own side on this. I do think as Christians, we ought to pull all of our kids out of the public school system.
Okay. Yeah.
I do. I do because at this point, one, it would bankrupt the school systems. Mm-hmm. Because the school systems are totally, they're not public schools. That's, I think, a bad statement. And I'm not qualifying it. We're not saying that there aren't good schools out there. You can comment all you want or say what you want to us. We understand there's good school systems out there. We do get that. But we're not going to qualify that. We don't have time for that. But I do think that would be the best thing we could do because it's a government school system. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, although a lot of the conspiracies that people are coming up with have been found to be right. Just really weird.
Just give it a little time.
But they are breeding something.
Yeah.
And as you know, we're both Gen X. I mean, I'm barely Gen X. Both are barely Gen X. But we are, looking back how the school system has changed. It's like, man, if you're looking at the school system and say, well, it was like this for me, it is not the same way. Mm-hmm. Like a good example, and I don't have the stuff to quote this. You look it up yourself if you're listening. But, they talk about the sex abuse in churches. Sex abuse in public schools is 1,000 times worse than anything happens in church. Because it's government controlled, you don't hear about it. Like, when was the last time you heard about a sexual predator in a public school? You think they're not there? Yeah. They're all over the place, and some of them are even kids. Yeah. Like, as a parent, I do think it is a faithful way, is homeschool them, make the sacrifice you have to make to homeschool them or get them into a private school.
Yeah.
And we could, one, shut down the school system, but two, we could actually, like, You'll see the blessings of that. I don't know how else to put it. Having your kids around is a blessing.
Yes, for me, I I think originally the concept of we're in a small town.
Yep.
Right. We have someone who is a gifted educator, and we'll bring 15 kids into a classroom.
Yep.
And they'll learn their basics.
Yeah.
Right, and interact with one another and go home. I think the concept's okay, but now today, as Christians looking at what's being taught, it's completely opposite of what we believe, right? So at home, they're learning about how God created everything, right? And how that man has purpose because we are made in the image of our Creator. Mm-hmm. But then they go to school and they stand before a professional and they learn, no, we have no purpose. A big bang happened, right? We all evolved. Right. And then we wonder why these kids are going crazy at 14, 15, 16 years old because they've been taught their whole life that they have no purpose.
There's no meaning.
There's no meaning to their existence. right? And you follow that all the way. It's like, well, why not do this or that? Where's the standard of right and wrong if we have no meaning, right? And then obviously the powers that be have been pulling everything out of the schools, prayer, 10 Commandments.
Yeah.
I mean, so just basic logical thinking says, why would I put my child, who I love with all my heart, in that situation?
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to.
It takes some sacrifice to do it.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
It takes a lot of sacrifice.
It's hard.
It is hard work.
It's hard.
But it's worth it.
It is.
I can't remember which curriculum it was. It was the first one me and my family had tried. Anyways, I remember reading the story behind it. Mm-hmm. The guy he created this curriculum, which I thought was just genius. He created the curriculum because his wife passed away and he didn't want to send his kids they were homeschooled. Yeah. He didn't want to send them because he still had to work to public schools. So he created a curriculum kids could do from home without their parents there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was really good. I mean, we tried it. It was just a little too, too difficult. I guess it was kind of antiquated a bit in the sense that it was CD based, DVD based, and things like that. And it was like just too antiquated and it hadn't been really updated, but it was really simple. At the end of the day, if you were to take that curriculum, what he was doing was having the kids read the classics, then write books on what they read, and then work on math. Yeah. Like it was really simple. It's like kids read, they write, and then they work on math.
The stuff you actually use in life.
Right.
Not busy work.
Yep.
It's just actual concrete. I'm going to use this the rest of my life.
It's doable. Like everybody can do it. Yeah. It's the sacrifice that's made to do it. And it's like, if you sent your kids to public school and that's your choice, that's fine. I honor the fact of the family government. I'm just saying, I think there is a way that it has become exactly it's not what it was when you were a kid. Right. Like it's different. And our kids aren't missionaries either. That's another defunct thing.
Oh yeah.
I hate that. And I've sent my kids because they're missionaries. They're going to share the gospel. Like, can your kid even articulate the gospel? Yeah. Just because, like I tell my kids, God doesn't have grandkids.
That's not such an excuse.
Right.
You don't send your kids to a mission field.
No.
Also, oh yeah, my kids are going to Africa.
Yeah, right. They're 14 years old. They got this. Don't worry, you got it, kid. You'll be gone 8 hours a day.
And there's more of a heavily influence and more persecution in that environment than sending them anywhere else. So no, it's not a mission field.
It's not a mission field, exactly. And
it is, but our kids are not.
Our kids aren't the missionaries. The other problem I have too is the public school system is designed just to move them to the next government school system, which is the university. Yeah. And I'm not saying
higher education.
Yeah, higher education is another issue.
It is.
Big issue. Because that system is way overinflated with pricing. Mm-hmm. It is completely, I don't care what you do. You start looking into schools and it is liberal galore. Like it is highly liberal. Because when we think of political liberals, I'm going to say it's both politically liberal and religiously liberal. Oh yeah, because it is its own religion. I do think there's a bit of a.
Even so-called Christian universities have gone that way.
Like New St. Andrews, that's out in Moscow. That's like if my kids wanted to go there, it's about the only school I'd say, yeah, let's go. Mm-hmm. Other than that, if my kids, like my one daughter, doesn't want to go, she wants to be a doctor. That's great, or a nurse. Like that's great. I want her to be able to do that. But Dad's thought on it is. I know this is some people. I'm not going to say that, but my thought on it is until my daughter is married, she is under my protection as a father, and so if she's going to go to those school systems, she's going to do it here. Mm-hmm. Even as an adult, like she's going to do it here around Dad, around Mom, so we are there for her as the protection until she is married. Then I pass her on to her husband. Yeah. But like staying close to home, so at least as those topics are brought up. Because they are an adult and their brain is starting to click, we're able to have those discussions. Yeah. Right? But it also keeps down the pricing, too, of college, that stuff. But at the end of the day, like, I want to push my boys get into the trades. I want to push my girls be moms. Like, be a mom. There's no higher calling on this planet than to be a mom. Yeah. Like, even as us as pastors, like, there's a higher calling. It's to be a mom. That mom is...
Well, not for us.
Yeah, but for us. Our job is to make sure Mom can be that mom.
Yeah, exactly.
If we're not doing our job, Mom can't.
Yeah, that doesn't work. Homeschooling is very difficult if someone's not being the supportive system. Yeah. That's just how it is. So we have we talk about both ends of the spectrum, public school versus homeschool. But then there's the middle road of private school. Yeah. Right. And obviously, many of our tens of our audience there, or how did you use to say?
Well, tens of tens.
No, yeah, tens of tens.
Yeah, tens of tens, and of that,
maybe some of them,
of that, like 2 of tens, right. Maybe send them
that are Christian. So, and they realize, you know what, we just can't do that right now.
Yep.
Right.
Or they have the financial ability to do that.
And if you have the financial ability, there are good private schools.
Oh yeah, yeah. But my one daughter, she goes to Genesee Christian School. It's a good school. Mm-hmm. She's told me stuff that like some of these kids are basically pagan kids and acting like pagan kids, saying things they shouldn't say and making jokes they shouldn't say, joke about, which is uncalled for. But again, that does fall, though, to my theory of the lowest common denominator here. The lowest common denominator is a bunch of kids in a room that can act like a bunch of kids.
Yeah.
I'm grateful for my daughter has that background of homeschooling because she comes with a little different thought on it.
Well, yeah, my daughter should probably do the same thing, but she's going into high school. And so the fact that we got to educate her up to the point where she's knows better.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To be like your dog, come home and report that back to you.
Yeah.
This is what happened today, and these are the way the kids are acting.
Yeah.
And
the response is, well, what did you do about this? She said, I don't hang out with those kids. They're idiots. It's my girl.
But again, like with yours, same with mine. That's just her choice. She really wants to do it. And I got to teach her to read. She really struggled, and I got to teach her to read. So that was a blessing. And now she's a good reader. She just wants to go and play sports and be more active.
Yeah, which is cool too. I mean, you're supporting what's cool about that is being able, like with the homeschooling brain, starting there is we're able to support our kids' interests.
Yeah.
Too, like my boy's getting a construction of some kind. Like my one son, Dennis, he's a barber. He's a great barber. He got into his 18's been doing it for, how was he now, 23? Been doing it for 4 years, I think now. Yeah. It's like, man, what a blessing that is. At a young age, he has no debt. He's ready to go and making killer money. Pushing the kids that way. Now I do need to get Dennis married here. So if our tens and tens of listeners, if anybody out there is single and wants to meet Dennis, you just send us a message and I will I'll hook you up with Dennis. He's right now squirming, going, Dad. But I mean that is the private schooling is a valid option, especially within the Christian school.
Obviously do research.
Yes,
I'm absolutely. Sure there's bad ones, just like any, and there's bad homeschools.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Right? Bad homeschool parents, right? We're just lazy. I mean, every situation we can mention, there's obviously a negative aspect to it if the people doing it are not up to par. Yeah, and if you are homeschooling, I guess too, don't compare yourself to others. Like your kids are going to learn different than these kids, and this parent's going to organize it a different way than you're going to organize it. Like you have to start with am I doing it right? Are they there? Are they learning? Yes. Are you doing the best you can? Yes. Guess what? It'll turn out okay. Yeah. And that's a great thing. Like the way my daughter started off, if she was in the public school system, she would have probably been a non-reader way up into junior high. Yeah. Right? Because that's what happens. I mean, today, how many illiterate high schoolers do we have? Yep. Right? You just Google the numbers. And then, and it's so easy to just miss them. Yeah. But in homeschooling, you can't. No. Right? You can say, okay, what are you struggling with? Let's slow down and work on that. Yeah. But you got 30 kids around, you're not raising your hand going, I can't read. Yeah. You know what I mean? That's a good point too. Think about it. Like your kids, for instance, are what? 15, 13, and 11? 12. Just turned 12, yeah. 12. 15, 13, and 12. The 12-year-old, because you're all in the same room, is learning the same things your 15-year-old is. Mm-hmm. Because they're right there. Even though this one's working on this, they're still there. And there's times where you're interlacing teachings together, like history, things like that. Yeah. And so he's got his 10th grade curriculum. He's got his 8th grade, but there's a lot of interaction. There is. So there's a lot of just conversations, videos. We all learn together. You're able to push those younger ones too, which is really cool because sometimes they grow up faster. They do. They learn things faster too because now they're watching this happen with this kid and they're paying attention. Or you're doing it together. You're actually forcing them instead of going to the lowest common denominator. You're now pushing them to the highest common denominator. Yeah, and you never know. Shoot, like with him, my 12-year-old, I was like, you know what, buddy, I got you 8th grade curriculum. But I was looking at the math and I don't know. Yeah. Like it might be a little beyond you. He goes, I really want to try it. Let me just try it. He's just blown it away. Yeah. He's just tearing it up. I was just like, wow. Like I could have held him back, but I didn't need to. Right. Because he just gets it. Yeah, it's a positive thing. And as Christians, like I do have a theory.
throw my theory out there.
I love theories.
This you want to like, we're in the Flint area. Flint, Michigan's school system is terrible. It's falling apart. My mother-in-law used to work in the school systems. It's just, it's not there. What if some churches, if they ever got this idea, I think it'd be brilliant. If every church in a county, let's say, gave 5% of the money coming in, just 5% of the money coming in, they could potentially start a private school that could take over for a failing public school.
Oh, yeah.
And now you could make a school system into a missionary organization. Like, it's totally plausible now because this money is there and you're able to go, you know what, this school system's falling apart. It's in shambles. We're going to do this free of charge for the public, free from government constraints too. Like, we're able to do this ourselves and open up. You could Nick, change the makeup.
Wait a minute. If that's all it takes, why not just fund the public school or just give them
Yeah, right. Why? Yeah, which is a joke too.
Right? I mean, that's probably what someone's thinking.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. It was like, wait a minute. No, they have a flood of funds coming in. They sometimes. Do. They're just. It's just not happening.
We're paying for our kids' public schools that aren't even going to it.
Right. It's called taxes.
There's states I know that you can get that money back.
Oh, wow.
I know Indiana, I believe, is one of them, where if you're sending your kid to a private school, the government will say, well, here's X amount of those dollars back to give the public school to pay for it.
Yeah.
Like, okay, cool.
Why not?
What's the here's the question: what's the harm in not doing that? If the government schools are so great and they're neutral, which there's no neutrality, but if they are neutral, why would they care?
Right.
But they do care. They want that money, and they're going to keep flooding it in there. So,
and this is not. I mean, look, so your theory, right? The 5% from all the churches. That's not saying because we're in conflict. Well, I mean, maybe we are. I'm saying in a lot of ways we are.
We are.
But the reality is, why would we do that? It's not to fight. It's to better the children's education.
Exactly. It's to bless them.
It's to get them in a situation where they're actually going to thrive.
Yep.
And if you're not thriving here, you could thrive here.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it would be so simple to do it.
Yeah.
It would. But here's the thing.
Wait. That would mean we have to be unifying around something.
That's what I was going to say. It wouldn't be that easy because the church is, it's got to be Baptist, it's got to be Presbyterian, it's got to be Lutheran. No, it doesn't have to be. But I mean, the encouragement is, definitely from both of us, is like homeschool your kids. Like, it's worth it, or at least private school them. It does blow my mind, like how many, and I was one. I mean, you were one too. We sent our kids somewhat. You didn't send your kids to public school at all, did you? But we did for a while, and it did have to have like a shift in our thinking to get us to this place. I know I wanted to do it years before my wife was able and ready to. And I had to, disciple my wife in that. And it took a few years to get my wife like, you can do this. Because my wife's, her background was, she graduated from Flint schools with like a really high GPA and could barely read.
No.
I mean, for years, her and I worked together. She'd still, she still would tell you she struggles. But man, she's a blessing. Like, she can read just fine now. Yeah. But she struggled for a long time with that stuff. And she was lost in it. Had a kid, kid in high school and all that, and just got lost. And that happens with our kids. I would admonish people, like, get your kids out of there.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's not comfortable, and people get upset, like, you're judging me, whatever. I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, I care about my kids, and I do care about your kids, and I want what's best for them. And I think that answer is that homeschooling, because kids, they don't come out weird. If they come out weird, they're just like their dad, and I'm quite odd, so I don't find, it's
relative.
Yeah. The other thing too, something we were talking about, one of the guys at church today too, is the ability to say yes to your kids. And that's one thing, like, I've tried to do with my kids, is try and say yes more than I say no. It felt like when they were in public schools, it was always like, can we go do this? No, you have homework to do. Did you get your homework done? There's always that push for homework.
Yeah.
And not time for like family stuff. Like telling my kids, I want them to say yes.
7 hours in class and you come home with homework.
Right.
I just don't get that.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. And where are you spending that time in scripture with your kids? When are you spending that time in anything with the kids?
It's like, don't you get enough
right
when you're there?
Yeah, I don't get that. So, I mean, I'm going to say I am against the government school system. I do want to use that. I'm against the government school system. I do think it's defunct. I do think it's not good anymore. Don't compare it to what you had as a kid.
Yeah, it's a little different.
And get a paradigm shift of, it's going to struggle. We may have to downsize some stuff. We may have to, do other things, but it's the best way to go about it. And at the end of that struggle, when they're done with it, you'll see the blessing.
Yeah.
Like, I really do believe you'll see that. Like, I hope my kids turn around and do what mom and dad did when they have their kids. Like, first off, have a lot of kids, but second off, like, homeschool them, take that time and do it.
Yeah. Do you know how it used to be? I mean, probably still is, just this natural given that we just all have to accept that when your kids become teenagers, they're going to just hate you.
Right.
Right. They're going to reject you. You know what I mean? And
why is that too? Like,
I
was that way.
I was too, but I'm convinced it was because of the influences of my life. It was my peers and my friends, right? So my friends became more important than my mother and my father.
Yeah.
I have not seen that in our children.
No.
Right? They're past the age where they should have rebelled.
Right.
Right. And no, I mean, we're all super close. All of it. You're super close to your kids. Yeah. I'm close with my kids.
And I'm close with your kids, and you're close with my kids.
Right. And they're not disobedient.
No.
Everyone always speaks about how well-mannered they are. And yet they're highly educated. Right. Like my oldest son's, I go to him with math problems. Right. Because his brain is a calculator. Right. And so for people saying, well, homeschooling, you have all this disadvantages. It's not true.
No, it's not.
It's not at all. And for those who are out there struggling, and maybe you're trying to do the whole public school at home, I would just say slow down and think about your own life, your family style, your schedule, how you interact with one another. Like we don't start till 10:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
We don't have to get up at 7 or 6 in the morning. Right. I want to wait till my kids are fresh.
Yeah.
Right. I don't want to drag them and try to get them to learn something that their brains are not even capable of receiving because the hour's so early.
And then the idea has to be super long. Like you can get most things done for all the stuff they would have got done in a public school system, if you want to look at that, in probably like 2 hours.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It'd be done. And your schedule can be flexible.
Yeah. I think we I don't know. We're probably about, unless they have something they're really struggling with, we're probably about 4 hours, But some days we're just like, you know what? Mom's got this, dad's got this, the day's crazy, you get a day off today.
Yeah, exactly.
And they probably get less days off than the public school because we don't count like all the different holidays and stuff like that. We do obviously winter, Christmas break, and I think we do spring break. But I don't know.
Yeah, we do the same thing. It's like, there's days where things are going on, but some of those
days.
But some of those days too are like, hey, we're going grocery shopping, so my wife will take the kids with her grocery shopping.
Yeah,
and that blessing is they're learning how to count the money as they're going through it. They're learning how to bag. They're learning what mom does to create food for the family.
Yeah, like
they're seeing things that other kids just don't get.
Yeah,
like my kids will go in the store and they probably know more about food pricing than I do because they're with mom. Like how expensive it is, and they tend to think differently about even the food.
Oh yeah, my son's always grabbing the receipt. Let me see how much that was.
So we just gotta. It comes to a mind, a change of mind.
Yeah. On
what we're doing and why we're doing it.
Yeah.
And trying to do what's best for our children.
Yeah.
And honestly, I'm just gonna say I would rather have a kid that's a complete idiot but knows Christ. Like you just like if you think of a hillbilly, I'd rather have a kid that's. Man, he's never going to work more than Walmart, but he knows Christ over a kid. I know this is over a kid who's highly educated, but is completely lost.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, makes all the money in the world, but he's lost. Or I've got this kid who's just loves his wife. He works at Walmart, stocking the shelves. They've got their own little house, a couple of kids, they're homeschooling, and they just know the Lord and love him. And I'm like, man, I would rather have that.
I think I just found something I think everyone would agree with this on. That you will find highly educated people in politics who have not so good character. Right?
Exactly.
Right. And honestly, like you're just saying, someone who knows Christ or has a good character, right, versus education.
Yep.
Because it doesn't matter how smart you are. If you're an awful person, you're no good for society.
Right.
Right. And so that's another part of the blessing of homeschooling is not only guiding your kids educationally, but morally, teaching and helping shape their character.
Yeah. Maybe that's the problem. We value money and we value education higher than we should.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that's some of the issue. Like why do some kids send kids here? Because, I want them to be highly educated, so they can get a good job, make good money.
Go to college, do the whole ladder thing.
Right. But reality is that stuff doesn't make a person valuable at all. It doesn't at all. Like no. I just want my kids to, at the end of the day, have their families. Like when I go to be with Christ, I want my kids to still take in the next generation and passing that on. I think a few years ago, it's been a while, but we did the math. Like if all of my kids had 4 kids, and then like how many generations, when you do that exponentially, I don't remember how many generations it was, 10 generations or what, but like if each of them had, so if you think of, I may butcher this, somebody's going to watch it and probably like Hudson, your kid, and be like, oh, data says this. But it was something like within 10 generations, there's like 250,000 people, something like that. But if you imagine like, okay, I raised my kids faithfully. They know the Lord. They have 4 kids. They know the Lord. They have 4 kids. They know the Lord. And you start spreading this out within 10 generations. Basically, the county that we live in, which I think is 350,000, could basically overpopulate it with Staleys, like very easily.
Yeah,
and take it over and be
legacy.
And that's where we need to just have that mind shift of like, man, it's what does God value?
Yeah, not what you value.
Right.
Like if you value money, then I want my kids to be super, super rich. And honestly, I think most parents wouldn't say, I want my kids to be really rich. I would say I want them to be secure.
They'll say successful.
Yeah, successful, secure.
I want my kids to be successful.
And then again, that goes to the same question. What do you value as success? Like my ideal is a hardworking son who loves his wife and provides for his family, loves his kids and leads them and loves his neighbor.
Yeah.
Right? That he's actually a blessing and benefit to those around him, to his local church.
Yeah.
Right? I don't need him how's that going to benefit me?
Right. Yeah, right? Because like look at us for example though. Like we are both blue collar when it comes to it. We've both had history of working with our hands. I mean, truly working with our hands, like in the sense of physical labor all day long. Yeah. And all of that to say, like, we're pastors. Go figure that out. It's mind blowing to me because I mean I'm an idiot most of the time. But that reality of like that, what is successful? Successful is in God's eyes, not in our eyes, and to step back and say, what does God say successful is? Yeah. And it can be, some people are blessed with like wealth and so on. And it's awesome. That's great. And they're Christians and they're benevolent, they're giving, they're caring, they love their local church, they do all these things, and that's a blessing. But don't look at the guy who does, like, he's got a job at Home Depot, in the lumber department. Right. And he's got, 4 or 5 kids. He doesn't make a lot of money. They're stretched to make ends meet. But he's faithful, loves his church, gives what he can to his church, does everything he can, and is just raising his kids. Like, they're both successful in the eyes of Christ. Yeah. Because if we look at the idea that even our jobs were given as a blessing from God, we can now take value in that work we do. Mm-hmm. And see it as
doing it in a way that's God honoring,
right? Like
and good for people.
Yeah, kids own a business someday. Like one of my kids own a business. I pray that they own a business, they're successful in it, and they have people they employ, and those people are paid a good wage. Yeah, like that's
make successful. A good product, sell at a fair price. Right.
That's all we got to do. So we're not saying at the end of the day, we're not saying you're a bad Christian if your kids are not homeschooled or private schooled, but I would encourage you to take a step back. And go, well, why am I doing it? Yeah. And start with those questions.
Why? Always start with why.
Yeah, and compare that to Scripture and just get to that. There's one other thing, just because. Let's see what I'm. Okay, we're about. Okay, got a couple more minutes here. I want to throw this out there because I was talking to my mother-in-law the other day, and somebody asked, and you'll have an answer for this too because we're both in the same boat on this one. Was asked why I personally don't send my kids to like youth group and to the Sunday school stuff. And I think that's a good question because you and I both had the same thought on this, why we don't do it. But I think it would be a good time to kind of answer that question because we do come from, again, a different perspective than most people do because, well, not most, but a lot of people do within the homeschool. So I'll ask you the question, why don't your kids get involved in the youth group? I know they've.
I mean, there's a really easy answer. Yeah. They don't want to go.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Same. And so I'm not going to force it. Now, if we were a family and I was a father that did not lead my family in the Word of God, then I would see it as a benefit because I would look at it as the way I look at a Sunday morning. I would say, well, that's the only time you're going to hear about God. Right. Right. But because we are in God's Word most days out of the week, I look at youth group as a time for them to socialize. It ain't necessarily kid church at that point because they get a healthy dose, not only in their curriculum, but just as family devotions. So I look at youth group and going, well, if you wanted to go to hang out with your friends, that's fine. But it's not a need for them.
Exactly.
It's not their church time, right? So they've always sat in main service with us, right? Same, and they learn. They sit there and listen, and that's a whole nother thing. Is they actually can pay attention,
right? Yeah, because they're used to it.
Right,
they're used to it. You know, with my kids, I always laugh. I say my kids are artistic, and I'm more autistic because I'm just not artistic at all. Yeah, it's just not the way I am. Yeah, but they like to, they all like to draw. Like all the kids they're great. And artists. So in church, one thing when they're younger, they're not having when they're younger, it's harder to keep them paying attention. But we went, okay, it's okay. Have a piece of paper, have a pencil, and by all means, do this. And what I found with my kids is they actually pay more attention when they're doing that. Mm-hmm. Like on the way home, we can talk about the sermon, and they were in on it. But if someone were to look over, they'd be like, "Oh, these kids are drawing." They are, but they're paying attention. Yeah. I mean, but when it comes to it, I would rather my kids when they're around other kids, usually your kids, because it's their best friends. Our kids, well, our kids are all like best friends. Right now, they're probably making. By the way, a shameless plug. Go check out their TikTok account for the tens of people.
Random things
our kids do. Or my kids do. They make videos, but that's their fun together. Yeah. And their socialization tends to be with their good friends, which I'd rather my kids have a couple of good friends than a lot of kids they just know.
That's a good way to put it. Just know. That's
true. That's look at high school. I look back at that.
You got 2 or 3 good friends, and then
I had tons of friends. Yeah. But all of those in high school, I talked to one because he's a vendor for the company I work for. Mm-hmm. So I've talked to him periodically. Other than that, none of those relationships stuck. No. But I do see our kids having lifelong relationship because they've just been friends forever. They're like family, and that comes from that homeschooling ability to be able to go, hey, we're going to up and hang out today, or we're going to do this, or we're going to, do these things. So when it comes to that, at the end of the day, it's we would rather our kids are with us because they're getting the other stuff during the week than in those systems. There's nothing wrong with them. I don't have anything saying people shouldn't do it, or, by all means, have your kids do it. But when it comes to it, again, always ask the reason why. Yeah. And why you're doing it, and then go from there.
So what was yours then?
It's the same thing. It really is. Yeah. It's man, they're getting it at home. And at the end of the day, I like them to be around their friends and spend that time because they're home a lot. Yeah. So I want them to be with their friends and those they, enjoy that time with. And then, I want my kids to be around adults more. Yeah. And, I look at my kids and your kids, our relationship with each other, your kids with me and my kids with you, we're actually friends with each other's kids too.
Yeah. They can have conversations, right, and not shy away.
Right. And when I was in the hospital, I'd rushed to the hospital for a kidney stone a couple weeks ago, or last week. And on the way I called you hey man, can you come grab my daughter? Cause she's with us. So she'll have the hospital. And immediately your wife jumps in the car and go gets her. And Anna's just it's all good because it's the Brackenridges. I'm good with that. Yeah. She knew she was safe. Everything was going to be okay. Yeah, I sent my wife,
my daughter, because
everything
they know them.
Yep. Right. Everything was going to be good.
You have to put her in an Uber.
Yeah. It's created those relationships though that are a bond that's almost like a family bond. Yeah. That has been created. So to me, I'd rather my kids are with those kids, the kids that are their friends and spending that time, and then with me during service than anywhere else on the planet. Okay. We both preach. I ain't gonna lie. I love when little kids are making noise when we're preaching. Hear that kid crying, it does not distract me.
Oh, yeah.
It's a sign of life in a church. If you bring your kids in the service and they're rowdy and I'm preaching, I'm good with that. Yeah. I think it's a sign of life. It's a sign of a church that's alive because there's children in it. It's not, and there's wiggly. Kids let them move a little bit. I remember preaching one time, one of the kids went sprinting like a Pentecostal up the front, right down the middle aisleway.
I know.
Sprint around.
Oh, yeah. He bolted for the communion. He grabbed the juice. And...
that one, yeah. I was thinking of Jameson's kid.
Oh, yeah,
when I think it was Izzy, the little.
Those are just funny moments.
But those times are it's one of the kid with the communion too. That was double fister too. Yeah. But those times, if your kids are in there, it's okay. It's trust me, the more they're around the adults, the more they'll start acting like the adults. Yeah. Instead of going to lowest common denominator. So
and there's multiple Facebook groups. Mm-hmm. If you're struggling, you can get some advice, help, prayer requests. I mean, there's just so many resources out there.
Yeah, we're always willing to help too.
And take the time to do the research. Yep. Again, look at what you as your own family values and just shape it around that.
Yep. Yeah. Don't. at the end of the day, you don't have to do school like everybody else. Mm-mm. And you don't have to do, I want to say, do church like everybody else. Like, at the end of the day, the blessing of the church is the Sunday morning with the gathering of the saints to worship Christ together with one voice. Like, that is a huge blessing, and that's what God has ordained things to be. And so I know for myself, I want to stick to as faithful as I can to that, and keep my kids where I've got them and be happy with it. You know? So
watch them grow and thrive and support them in their endeavors and lead them and guide them with wisdom that we've gathered over the years.
And sometimes hopefully a lot more than we've gathered too.
Either I tried that and it didn't work, or I tried it and it did.
Yeah, my kids don't have to get into the drugs and stuff like I did. I just trust Dad. So I guess that's probably about all I can think of.
Good. Yeah.
So, we thank you for listening, watching, whatever it is. It's a blessing to us that 10 people watch us and listen to us in some way.
I was saying, I don't know if it's we've done enough shows to do this, and I don't know if we've ever suggested it. But if there's a topic you'd like to hear us talk about, maybe you can send us a message. Yeah, we're game with that. Or if there's somebody like, hey, we got a good idea for somebody for you guys to interview. Like I can do all kinds of stuff. So we're open to suggestions.
We're open to anything. I mean, the reality is, like you said from the beginning, it's just us talking, and this is what our normal Sunday conversations kind of sound like. Cause we hang out, watch stupid movies or football today. Watch the Lions lose.
Yeah.
So. But so we'll go, I guess that's all we got. I guess at the end of the day, what the scripture we're going to close with is, "Go eat your bread with joy and drink your wine with a merry heart, for God has already approved what we do." So, thanks for listening.